Welcome to the Introduction to the Intellectual Will workshop, using values based goal setting to design your life. I am Lisa Marie Pierre, and you can connect with me at Lisa M. Pierre or on lisamariepierre.com. All the materials for this workshop are available on lisamariepierre.com/intellectual will, and you can click on the link to the folder, which will bring you to a Google Drive. And in that Google Drive has all the worksheets and all the materials needed to follow along with this workshop. So if you would like to discuss this workshop or discuss topics further, use the hashtag intellectual will on social media. You can connect with me on social media, like I mentioned, Lisa M. Pierre. On my LinkedIn, Lisa Marie Pierre. All the materials are available in the folder on Google Drive. And you can also subscribe to my newsletter where I send monthly insights onto what I'm thinking about personal development and professional development in general. So for this workshop, I'm going to first just go briefly over my journey to the intellectual will, give an overview of the intellectual will, and just give examples of how I've used it in my personal and professional life. And then we'll do some exercises that can help you determine your core beliefs, your goals, your one thing, and different milestones. And then I would suggest if you're watching this with people to share with a neighbor or a group and discuss what you've discovered about yourself, or in general, just get feedback from someone, to talk more about what you found. So I thought it would be fitting to start with my journey because I really feel it sets the foundation for how the intellectual will came about, why I became interested in productivity and personal growth and just finding out things about myself. So I'm from Long Island, New York. My parents are from Haiti, and so I'm a first generation American, and they really instilled the value of education. So the natural place thing to do after graduation from high school was to go to college. So I went to Spelman College and majored in psychology and minored in women's studies. It was there I decided I was going to go to law school. And that was because I pretty much had five choices from my family: law, engineering, teacher, nurse, or doctor. And so I knew that out of that list, probably law was my best bet. And that's because people always told me I was good at reading, I loved writing, so naturally I should be a lawyer. So I took the LSAT, I was applying to law school, and I realized that I did not want to go to law school. I only was going to law school because my family wanted me to. So I decided that I'm not going to law school. But then this is my senior year and I don't know what to do. What's next? So I had a family member that worked at a dental company and I was able to get a job working in the call center. So that was an interesting experience and a great learning experience in terms of adding to my career development. But while I was there for about a year or so, when I hit the year mark, my family started to ask me, so what's next? You're not going to work at a call center for the rest of your life, right? So then I started to think, okay, what am I going to do? So I naturally went onto Google and typed in something along the lines of how do you figure out what to do with your life? And the answer that came up was passion. And so follow your passion. So then I start to think, okay, like, what's my passion? So I love sports. I played sports my entire life. I played it in college. And I love managing people and organizing things. So I put it together and said, oh, I should be a sports manager. So I went to the University of Miami to study sports management. And while I was there, I had an internship, and I thought that I had a good chance of getting hired at this place. But this is around the recession, and so they had a lot of budget cuts and were making a lot of layoffs. So I had no chance of getting a job at this place. So I ended up being unemployed. So I went back home to Long Island, and I spent a lot of time just doing nothing, playing rock band, taking walks, riding my bike, trying to figure out what I'm going to do. But during this time, I was doing a lot of blogging. So that's kind of how, between going to school and getting home, I started this blogging journey and I started writing and then I started doing freelance work and helping people set up their social media accounts or helping them edit things. And eventually I turned to volunteering because I've always loved to volunteer. And so while volunteering at the Long Island Small Farm Summit, I met a gentleman who turned out to be my mentor later on, and we started making conversation. And he told me that they had an opening at his university, which was Hofstra. And he's like, you should apply. I think you would be a great fit. So next thing you know, I get a job at Hofstra University, and I'm a research associate. I loved it there. But I started to reflect and think, okay, in order to move up in this center in this organization, it looks like everyone around me has a PhD. So I thought to myself, okay, I need to get a PhD to advance in my career and just gain better skills. So you would have thought I would have learned my lesson from college and not tried to Google stuff. I did do a little bit better. I asked somebody, okay, I want to get a PhD. What should I do? I don't know what to get it in. And I was trying to decide between maybe going back into management or doing something else. And then someone said to me, what about geography? You can get a job with geography in anything. That's what they also said about psychology, but that didn't really work out. So anyway, I said, okay, I'm gonna go get a PhD in psychology in geography. And so I ended up going to Arizona State University. I actually got into the urban planning department. And I really enjoyed my time there. And my advisor actually got a position at Michigan State University. So I transferred along with her to Michigan State University into their geography department and ended up really finding a niche for myself in economic geography, focusing on entrepreneurship and management and kind of everything I've always been interested in, I found within geography. So now it's all about what's the next steps, right? And this is kind of how I started thinking about personal development and how to get better. So a New York Times article in 2016 started to talk about how do people enter their career. And so they separated people into sprinters, wanderers, or stragglers. So sprinters are those people, I'm sure you know someone like this who but at 5 years old said they wanted to be a pilot and they became a pilot. Wanderers are people who are just kind of, floating around and not sure what they want to do, but eventually they find something and they enter a career. And then you have stragglers who are just kind of drifting. They don't really, they're doing random stuff. They're a scuba diver in Australia, then they're a barista at some coffee shop. They're doing all this stuff and then eventually they find something. So I've kind of described myself as a wanderer, that I'm kind of wandering and not really knowing what I want to do. But then I saw this quote by Tolkien that said, not all those who wander are lost. And that really stuck with me because I realized that while on paper it may seem that I've been wandering, I really have been following something, whether it was a value or some skills that I really had that I wanted to develop further. So I wasn't necessarily wandering or lost. I was just on a journey that was different from other people. So when I think about what led me to productivity, I've always been organized and a planner. When I was younger, pre Google and Google Calendar and all these electronic apps and stuff, I had a piece of paper I used to carry around with me. And this piece of paper had all the times from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed. And I listed every hour what I was doing that hour. And so I pretty much all through high school and college, I relied just on a piece of paper. But later on with technology, I started moving towards Google Calendar eventually. I think around 2013, I finally said, okay, my paper system is not working. And that's when I entered the PhD program. And I was really overwhelmed. My system of using this piece of paper was not working for me. The PhD was overwhelming for me. It was different than my previous jobs where I was just given one task. And once that task was finished, we moved on to something else. But in a PhD, you have all these moving pieces. They want you to teach, they want you to do research, they want you to write publications, they want you to get money and take classes. And on top of this, you need to write your dissertation, do your research. I just did not know what to do with myself. So I thought to myself, okay, either I'm going to quit or I need to figure things out. And so I decided to figure things out. And where did I turn to? A book and many books, because that's what I've always done in life. When I'm trying to figure something out, I turned to a book because I know there's someone out there who probably has gone through what I'm going through. So I read many books, which I'm happy to share with people in the comment section what books I read that kind of just inspired me to just do better and figure out myself. And it became very interesting to me how to become productive, how to focus, how to work with other people, how to figure out goals. And so between 2015 and 2017, I was really at first running around in a circle like a hamster. Then I became very focused. And while I didn't maybe increase my productivity in terms of I had a whole bunch of publications all of a sudden that I did work more efficiently. And I figured out things a little bit more easily, and it helped me a lot with my decision making. And so the intellectual will, I mean, this is what this is all about, right? How did this system come about? So I have a friend who came up to me and just said, "Hey, Lisa, how do I get organized?" This was in October 2017. And so I sent him what you see to the right. I sent him what I was calling productivity steps. So I sent him this document and I was like, all right, this is how you get organized. And so he said to me after that, like, I don't know what to do with what you gave me. I don't understand. And here I am just confused. Like, I think it's pretty clear. I told you what to do. Like, get a calendar, figure out your equipment, get a workflow, determine your philosophy, and then do the work. But I realized that that was unfair to be thinking that way because my entire life I've been kind of doing this. It kind of intuitively comes to me to be organized. So I decided to go a step further and what I call the goal attainment system at the time. And that's in the Google Drive folder, what the intellectual will document that's about maybe 12 pages or so. That's what ended up coming out of that question. I don't know what to do. And what I did was trying to figure out if I had to tell someone step by step what I've done in life to help me become a little bit more organized and focus, what would I tell them and how would I explain it to them? And that's what I've been trying to do with this document. And it keeps getting refined because as I figure things out and I talk to more people, I realize, okay, this is how I can make this better. This is how I can make this better. So I realized that, there really is a difference between goals and systems. And so a goal is just a destination, a journey, it's a direction, it's the end, what you're trying to achieve. But a system is more of a process, right? It's steps that you're taking in the journey. And that is what, when you think about productivity and goal setting, sometimes you just think it's as simple as setting the goal. I want to be a CEO of a company. That's great, but there's more to it. What about your morning routines? What about your evening routines? What habits do you have? Are you reviewing your goals continually? Are you reflecting? Are you journaling? So these are all things that come into a system, which is why I was calling it the goal attainment system. But then my friend said, this is like an intellectual will. It's something that you're writing down your thoughts and your feelings and your mindset, just like you would do an actual will. And so if you think about a will, when people pass away, they put what they want to give people, where they want their money to go, all these things they plan out and they write out so people know. And this is the same thing with the intellectual will. It's not so much about following every step that's in there. Everyone's different. It's just a guide. But the most important thing is to be writing down what you want to do, reflecting on it, sharing it with people. So I came up with a definition that's broken up into three different parts. So the first part, deliberately expressing a desire to understand one's inner wishes for future actions. Deliberately providing documentation on one's inner wishes with the intent on passing on the information to oneself or others. Providing oneself with step-by-step instructions on how to carry out intentions. So this is kind of pretty much in a nutshell what the intellectual will is. But the intellectual will has different phases. And so as I was creating this document, I realized it could kind of be organized into 6 different phases. The first one, your core beliefs. The second, going over your goals. The third, creating a schedule. The fourth, creating a system. The fifth, coming up with routines and habits. And the sixth, reflection. And so these are questions that kind of prompt each phase. What are your core beliefs? Have you set your goals? Have you created a schedule? What system have you developed? What's your routine? And when do you reflect? For the purpose of this workshop, we're just focusing on all the steps that are in the core beliefs phase and 3 steps that are in the goals phase. But each of these different phases has different steps for things to just reflect on in terms of helping you. So I should note that you could kind of use these different phases for business or professional or for personal. I think for the purpose of the first time going through the intellectual will, especially when thinking about core beliefs, you should reflect personally about yourself, the essence of who you are. And that will help direct you in other ways. And then after you've figured out yourself as a person, then maybe you could try to use the core beliefs to think about how you would maybe want to organize a business or a company or different things like that. But for the purpose of this workshop, we're going to focus on ourselves first because I think you need to know yourself first before you move on to anything else. So, how do I use the intellectual will in personal and professional settings? I would say the number one way is decision making. It's helped me make decisions a lot more easier. So, for example, jobs. Because I know the different values I have and what I'm trying to do, it really helps me decide what jobs to avoid in when I'm looking on, say, LinkedIn or a career board or anything like that. So, for example, I value mentoring, I value curiosity. So, if I see a job that tells me in the job description that I'm mostly going to be alone in an office, looking at spreadsheets and that's about it, that may not be the job for me. Because if I value curiosity, I'm going to want a job that's maybe doing new things, where I can learn new things all the time, doing different projects. And I also would probably want a job that allows room for mentoring and helping other people, whether it's mentoring in the community or mentoring within the organization. So that can help. Also, because I'm a PhD student, I have to make a decision. Do I want to stay in academia and be a professor? Or do I want to go into industry and work at an organization or a corporation? So, based on my values, my mission, and what I do in general, I decided that industry is the best route for me for what I want to do. It also helped me with different organizations in the university at school and why I participated in them. Um, People outside the university probably won't know what COGS and SWIG and Triple G is, but they do know leadership, they know communication, they know problem solving, they know managing. And so I joined these groups with the goal of developing different skills that I had that I thought could probably push me further. It also helps with relationships. They may be people that you say hi bye to, but they're not people who maybe you will work on projects with. They may not be someone who will be your accountability partner because your values, your mission, why you're trying to do things do not align. And that's okay. Not everyone is going to align with everything. So, as we move forward, that was a very brief overview of just how I came to the intellectual will, a little bit about myself too, and how I think that kind of tied in with developing the system. But I thought as we move forward, before we get into the exercises, that we can use kind of like a case study. And I thought we could use Will Smith. I'm sure you know this person. Will Smith, great actor, just very involved in the industry, very out there. So if you think about what you think about Will Smith and what you know about him, just quickly reflect on what pops into your mind when you see this picture. What immediately popped into your mind? So for a second, I would like us to imagine Will Smith as an iceberg. I know. What? An iceberg? But yes. So I like this photo because the reflection kind of makes it seem that you can see, because with an iceberg, you only see the top and you can't really see the bottom. But with this picture, you see a reflection. It makes it seem like you can see the bottom. So I like to think of the top of the iceberg, of what we see, what we immediately think about a person. But then underneath is what we don't see, the things that are driving them, their motivation, right? And so Simon Sinek, he really has popularized the term the phrase starting with why, and knowing your why, knowing your values, and knowing what you want to do. But everything is really based on why you do things, the deeper thing, the motivations. And that's really the foundation. And then everything builds on top of it. But a lot of times we focus on what, because that's what you can see and that's very easy to do. And we forget about why, what's driving us. And we forget about sometimes our values. And so when it comes to looking at people or thinking about people, if we use the Will Smith example, probably whatever popped into your mind was thinking about the what he does, and thinking about the how, maybe some of his values. But maybe what didn't pop into your mind was maybe his deeper motivations that are driving his values and driving what he does. So when we think about what Will Smith does, maybe the first things that came into our mind were movies, TV, music, travel, like all these different things, right? Then maybe another thing that popped into your mind was relationships, adventure, fun, environment. And I don't know if these are Will Smith's values, but just based on just knowing about him from, you know, his music, through his TV and movies, and also just looking at his Instagram, I thought that, you know what, he probably values these things. I thought relationships, because if you look at all his pictures on Instagram, it's very rare that he has a picture of himself alone. Mostly all his videos, a lot of his pictures are with people or about other people. So I'm like, okay, relationships, adventure, and fun. This guy jumped out of a plane for his birthday. That seems wildly fun and adventurous. Also, the environment. He has a company with his son where they box water and try to make it more sustainable. So these are things that I thought, okay, these might be his values. And then as I was thinking, okay, what might be driving Will Smith? I don't know if this is true. And if Will Smith is ever watching this, we can have a great discussion about this. But I thought that he probably is trying to spread love and joy through laughter. And so if we think about all of this, it's kind of a continuum where things just kind of build on one another and connect with one another. So if his driving motivation is to spread love and joy through laughter, it would make sense that, he's having fun and adventure and he always wants to be with people and make them laugh. And he can show this to the world through his music. His music videos were always kind of fun, right? And colorful. His movies, while he's had serious ones, but he's also had some funny ones. His companies, his travel, they're all going to be about spreading love and joy through laughter. So as we move forward, think about the exercises in the sense of how would you take your values and what you do and why you do it and put it together to create the essence of who you are. So, for this workshop, as I mentioned, we're going to go over the different steps underneath the core beliefs phase. So, we're going to talk about legacy, mission, values, philosophies. What do we do? Setting goals, creating a backlog, and then if there's time wherever you're listening to this or watching this, I'm getting feedback and discussing it with someone. So, for determining your legacy, legacy is pretty much a one sentence that describes you, right? And it's written in the past tense. And you got to think big, beyond 100 years. And so I was recently listening to a podcast with, I believe it was Daniel Pink. He was on Super Soul Conversations with Oprah. And he was mentioning that most people do not know who their great grandparents are. They can't name them, they don't know them, but we still are influenced by them. And so it can be in different ways. So maybe I'm thinking more positively. Maybe if education is important to you or your family always encourage you to read and write and go to museums and do all this stuff, maybe that's something that was passed down through great grandparents. So as we go through this and we think, I'd like you to think big and think about the fact that maybe your great grandkids or nieces or nephews or whatever probably won't know your name. But what about you will still seep to them? And so I thought of some examples. Also Greg McEwen, he also talks about essentialism and all this stuff in general too, in terms of determining your legacy. And so I thought of some people who might be good examples. So MLK, he advocated for civil rights through love and light. That could be a good one sentence legacy statement. Theodore Roosevelt conserved the United States natural habitat. El Pimento, that's my grandma, by immigrating, provided her children and grandchildren an opportunity to gain an education in the United States. El Pierre, that's me, shared her knowledge with those who did not have access to information. So when we think about philosophy, I think about it like a motto, a motto, a mantra, things that just kind of innately are in you and what you're trying to do as you move through life. So for me, it's treat everyone and everything as you would like to be treated. I really try and want to be timely and efficient. And I also want my actions to cure my fear and just to do things even if I'm scared. So, with all that in mind, I would like you to take some time to determine your legacy and philosophy. It does not have to take you 10 minutes. You could pause this video and work on it for the next 3 days and then come back to the video and move on. But just take some time if you want to just quickly go through this. Take 10 minutes. What something I would like to mention before we move forward is that this is a process. I've been working on this for a long time, thinking, reflecting, talking to people. So you're not gonna, I mean, maybe some people might figure this out in 50 minutes, but others, it may take time, it may take reflection. So I'm giving 10 minutes just because you might be doing this with a group of people, you might be in a class, who knows, and you're rushed for time. But at least it helps you just write things down and you can always go back to it. So don't get so stuck on the time. So, in terms of determining goals, I this exercise I learned about through this story about Warren Buffett. I don't know if it's a true story or an urban legend, but apparently Warren Buffett was talking to one of his employees, and the employee was basically talking about all these things he wants to do. So Warren Buffett told him to write down 25 goals that he has, and then narrow it down to the top five that he really wants to focus on. And then don't pay attention to the other 20. Like, avoid it like the plague because you need to just focus on the five things. And then once you finish, one, two, three, all five things, then you could choose something else from the goal. So, what I would like you to do is to go into the Google Drive and take out the Buffett method worksheet. So what I would want you to do is to list out 25 goals that you have. I would suggest more of a lifetime, but you could do it any time period. But if we're talking about trying to figure out ourselves, the essence of who we are, I would suggest thinking about more of the lifetime goals that you have. After you choose the five things on that list, and you're specific about when and how, we are going to just choose one thing on that list. And that kind of idea of the one thing comes from the book, The One Thing, where he says to choose one thing that you're focusing on. And when this one thing that you choose can also change. Nothing is just set in stone that it has to be this. But for the purpose of this exercise, we're going to choose one thing. So for example, for me, I narrowed down my list to the five here that I'm showing you. So I said I want to own a profitable R&D company, graduate with a PhD in geography. I want to write a book. I want to create new material for my website. And I want to get hired at a think tank. I'm not sure in what type of job position, but I think I would like to work on literacy and information and that kind of area and economic development. And then I narrowed it down to one, own a profitable R&D company. So you might be thinking, Lisa, don't you want to graduate first before you own this company? Don't you want to get hired? Yes. But I narrowed it down to own a profitable R&D company because I feel like every other of these five goals is nested under this one goal. And so when we talk about milestones, I think it's important to kind of set benchmarks to know that we're in the right direction, we're hitting it. I use 10 years because, that just seems like a nice number. And just keep in mind, these things could happen sooner, they could happen a little bit later, and you could always refine, but it's a good starting point. So for me, I thought, in 3 months, I need to have my dissertation defended and graduate and get my PhD. Then in 6 months, I would like to get a skills training at NYU, which will probably help me later on as I want to do research and development. And then in 1 year, I'd like to have I would have a full-time job in New York at the think tank, making at least $100,000. In 3 years, I would like to pay off debt, save at least $90,000. In 5 years, I'm a director at this think tank. I've created new models for information literacy. And then in 10 years, I'm the owner of a profitable research and development firm based in RBC is Rockefeller Center. It's a place in Long Island. So all these things help me move forward towards this goal of owning a firm. And so graduating, I get my PhD, have my qualifications, I've gained my skills. This training will help me learn more about different quantitative skills and softwares and grant writing. Having this job, I'm going to gain skills, I'm going to gain networks, I'm going to get to know people. Having no debt, that's important as a business owner. Finance is one of the reasons why businesses fail. So, and saving money to help me put towards this business because I would like to bootstrap versus getting loans from the bank. And becoming a director is just having leadership skills, right? So all of these are building towards me with my one thing. So what I'd like you to do now is just take some time to determine your goals and your milestones. You could pause the video at this point and work on it and then come back. So in terms of determining our mission and why, this was inspired by Simon Sinek, as I mentioned before. He talks about starting with your why and figuring out, and it'll help you figure out what you do and your values and all of that. And then I read this article by Benjamin Hardy. He talks about the deepest why, and he had a bunch of questions and prompts that he called layers. And so I was going through his exercise, which was very helpful. I thought it was more of a ladder. And then I adapted it and changed it a little bit and added some different questions and changed the design and it made me reflect and come to my answers a little differently. So what I would like you to do now is go into the Google Drive folder and take out your Discovery Ladder worksheet and start at the bottom of the ladder. You're going to take your one thing and place it on the bottom step, the first answer, and you're going to keep answering the questions until you get to the top rung. So answer 7 is your mission and answer 8 is your what. So while I was doing this exercise, that's when my mission kind of emerged and my what kind of emerged was by 7 or 8. So that is why I put those numbers, but it may be different for you. So this is an example of what I did. And so I tried to find a font that could kind of stand out. So as you look at your ladder, on the left side, you'll see Q1, A1, Q2, A2, so on and so on until it gets to A8. And these are the prompts that you will see in the questions. For example, what about A1 is important to you? You're going to take A1 and insert it into the sentence. So, for example, the Q1 is what's your goal? So in A1, what you're going to do is put what you said was your one thing. So I said owning a business. So I put owning a profitable business. And then for each question, it's going to prompt you to dig a little bit deeper into your motivations, right? So what about owning a profitable business is important to you? I thought passing on wealth. So what about passing on wealth is important to you? Freedom. What about freedom is important to you? The opportunity to have choices. What about the opportunity to have choices is important to you? It's a human right. What about it's a human right is important to you? It's the essence of what it means to inhabit this planet. What about the essence of what it means to inhabit this planet is important to you? It enriches the soul. And why do you want to enrich the soul? Connection. And so here is the what you do. So I'd like to say that the what you do may be very concrete for people. It may be teacher, it may be accountant, whatever the answer is. Mine was a little bit more abstract. And so is this connection. So for me, that just shows what I do is that it's all about connection for me, right? So if I'm thinking more in terms of career path, maybe the type of job titles are not necessarily as important, but that in terms of the description, it's more important for me to look for things that deal with connection and enriching the soul, enriching the mind. And so these answers, and this is an example of my responses to this exercise. Yours may look very different, but at the end of the day, whatever is at the top, it may be more concrete or maybe a little bit more abstract. So, for example, my mission is enrichment to enrich the mind and soul. And what I do is connection. I connect people to ideas that encourage transformation, growth, and a love of learning. Learn, grow, pass. That's kind of my motto. So I'd like you guys to take some time right now to determine your mission and your what. And you could pause the video right now and work on that. So determining your values. So while at Michigan State, I took a workshop that was based on Brene Brown. I guess she has a workshop about daring greatly. And Brene Brown, if you don't know her, I would encourage you to Google her. She has a couple of TED Talks. She's been on Oprah, Oprah Super Soul several times, talking about vulnerability and shame resilience. So in this workshop that I did at Michigan State, there was a values list. And so if you go into Google Drive, you will see this values list. And from there, you can circle the values that resonate with you. And then I would narrow it down to maybe 3 to 5 and think about how these 3 to 5 values support your mission and how the values support it. And if you need more values ideas, go on Google, search for synonyms of words, search for other values lists. And if you still can't decide, I would suggest hitting up friends and asking them about your top characteristics. Look for common themes. A lot of times we can't see what we naturally do, but other people can see them very clearly. And then when you get a chance, maybe doing it during this exercise or on your own, I would suggest coming up with definitions for your values because sometimes you might read what like Webster Dictionary says, and you might think to yourself, you know what, this is not exactly what I think about this word, but it's kind of close. Then I would suggest coming up with your own definition. And that's what I did. So my values are curiosity, growth, sharing, mentorship, and fellowship. And so I'll just go, these are my definitions that I came up with. So I will just share two. So curiosity. So my definition of curiosity is that a love of learning leads to wonder. Curiosity is gaining new ideas, searching for patterns, and a genuine interest in life by asking questions. And then mentorship. Ideas are a thought that can linger or take form. Sometimes all that is needed is a nudge in the right direction. Mentorship is supporting people in creating an opportunity, developing it, and seeing it to completion. So I'd like you to take some time now to determine your values. Pause the video and work on your values. So after you've done all these exercises, you have all these answers, right? I'd like you to remember this is a process. What you did right now does not have to be correct. There is no correct. We're always growing. We're always learning new things. This may change in 15 years, whatever you wrote down, which is important why it's important to reflect over time. So now that you have the answers to each of the questions, that's in the intellectual, the first page, I would like you to reflect if they align with one another. Does your why is it supported by your values? Is it supported by your what? Do they all align with one another? And make adjustments as needed. So I'd like you to take some time right now to pause the video and review. Okay, so now that we're back and we've reviewed, let's discuss. You could discuss in the comment section. You could discuss with friends and family. You could discuss on social media using the hashtag intellectual will. But think about what insights did you gain? How might this help you as you make personal and career decisions? And if you're still stuck, it's okay. Hit up friends and family. I'm always stuck. Like I've been working on this thing for several years now. And I always was struggling with what do I do? My values have not changed. My mission, I dug a little deeper. You know, at first I thought it was freedom, but then I realized it was really more enrichment of the mind and soul. But when it was, what do I do? I just couldn't figure out. What do I do? At first, I thought I was a problem solver. Then I thought I was a storyteller. I was like, no, that's not right. That's not right. So one thing I did was that I asked my colleagues, some of my friends, family members, I said, what do you see me doing? Like, what do you see me doing as a career? Like, if you close your eyes, you just picture me doing things. And I got a lot of interesting answers. And they seemed very different. Somebody said a podcaster, a journalist, another person said outreach, someone said guidance counselor. a manager. There was like all these different responses. And I'm looking at the list and I've looked at it several times and I thought, this is very different. These are all very different job positions, very different career paths. So I asked one of my friends, I showed her the list and I said, you know what? I can't figure out what the common theme here is. And she told me it's very clear. Every one of these jobs has something to do with relationship to people, and they all have to do with leadership. And then they made it click to me. Wow, that is true. And it also, just to be clear, I just literally last week figured out my what do I do, which was connection, and so it made sense. Connection, relationship to people, leadership roles, ideas, connecting people to ideas. So it made me reflect a lot. So now it's helped me a lot in terms of making decisions when it comes to career path, what kind of jobs to apply to, what kind of job positions in the future, now that I have all these answers. So I would love for you to discuss and think about this some more. So that concludes this workshop. Very brief overview, an introduction to intellectual will. I would love to continue doing this and just going down the intellectual will and breaking down each step. So into exercises to help you figure out more how to do things. Because I think it's very important not to just say make a calendar, but to show someone how to make a calendar. So if you enjoyed this, please share it with someone. As I said, you could continue the discussion on the hashtag intellectual will. You can connect with me on social media, Lisa M. Pierre, LinkedIn. The materials will always be available in that Google Drive as long as Google Drive exists. And I'll keep adding things as I continue to develop these processes and these different ways to do things. And as always, you can subscribe to my newsletter and keep up to date with what I'm doing. So I thank you for listening, participating, and hopefully sharing.